Hey guys, for today's video I will cover Mavuika's kit and everything else you need to reach her full potential. I'll cover what relics to use and what weapons to use and what teams. For Mavuika's skill, she can tap the skill to summon a ring around the active character that does single target pyro damage to up to 10 enemies at 2-second intervals for 15 seconds, meaning that she can do these attacks up to 7 times if she only uses her ring. When she holds the skill button, she replaces the ring by summoning her Flame Strider, which enhances her normal attacks and takes away the ring for as long as she's using the Flame Strider. Both of these skills give her a Nitro bar of 80 energy that determines how long she can use her skill, so when this Nitro limit is expended, so is her ring and Flame Strider. Keep in mind that the Flame Strider utilizes a lot more Nitro points, meaning that her ring and Flame Strider's duration will be shortened when you swap to her Flame Strider. Her ultimate is not reliant on energy, but instead on Fighting Spirit, which she obtains when Nitro points are expended by party members at a 1-to-1 ratio, and when party members use normal attacks, she gains 1.5 Fighting Spirit every 0.1 seconds. Her interruption resistance is increased and the damage dealt by her ultimate is increased based on the amount of Fighting Spirit she has when using the Elemental Burst. Her first talent increases Mavuika's attack by 30% for 10 seconds after an ally uses a Nitro Burst. Her second talent states that after using her Elemental Burst, every point of Fighting Spirit she expends increases the damage that the current active party member deals by 0.2%. The maximum increase obtainable this way is 40%, and this effect lasts for 20 seconds, decaying over this duration until it reaches 0. For the majority of Mavuika's playstyles, your main goal is to try and generate as many Fighting Spirit points as possible by pairing her up with characters that have Nitro mechanics and characters that do a lot of normal attacks. Although it's fine if they don't, since normal attacks aren't that crucial towards her Fighting Spirit generation, with a ton of main DPS characters being extremely good with her even when not spamming normal attacks. Then you're gonna want to use her ultimate and spam her charge attacks because they do the majority of her ultimate damage. On melts / vaporize teams, which are her best teams by the way, make sure your first hit melts or vaporizes, since a massive amount of her ultimate damage comes from her first hit, which is a lot easier to vape or melt than her next 9 to 10 charge attacks. Because of this advice also applies to her off-field playstyle, in which she does her first hits from her ultimate and then instantly swaps out to the main DPS on the team, so that the main DPS can make use of her 40% damage bonus along with her ring attacks. For her artifacts, Mavuika's on-field and off-field playstyles, best in slot artifact is going to be the Obsidian Codex artifact because it gives her a 15% damage dealt boost to all of her attacks when she has her Nitro status on field, and 40% crit rate when she expends Nitro points on field. For an alternative sub-DPS artifact, the Golden Troop set would be a decent alternative since it gives her a 75% damage dealt when she is off field, although I wouldn't recommend this set since most of her damage from using this set will come from exclusively her ring, meaning that she won't be able to get her ultimate nor get any buffs to her ultimate either, since she won't be able to use her ultimate consistently, being able to only use her ultimate partially every 2 rotations if she's the only one expending Nitro points, and this set doesn't give any buffs to her ultimate, which is typically where most of her damage comes from, meaning that you'll rarely use her at her max potential. Regardless, if you want to see her ring damage do insane numbers, then this will be her best set. For a supportive off-field playstyle, the Cinder City set is going to be her best in slot because it gives a 40% elemental damage boost for every element that is involved in a reaction, which she can consistently trigger off-field with her skill. However, if another character on your team is already using the Cinder City set, using the Tenacity of the Milif set would be her best alternative since it increases the attack percentage of her allies by 20% consistently. For a Virgin team, the Flowers of Paradise Lost set will be her best in slot since it provides her with 80 elemental mastery and up to 80% damage dealt for Virgin reactions. An alternative but inferior set to this playstyle would be the Gilded Dream set because it provides a potential 180 elemental mastery boost. For her Goblet, she's going to want pyro damage bonus unless you're running her on a Virgin team, in which case elemental mastery would be better. For her Circlet, you're going to usually want crit damage to even out her crit ratio since she already gets 40% from the Obsidian Codex set, but crit rate would also be good if needed, and elemental mastery if she's on a Virgin team. For her substats, you're going to want to prioritize getting crit rate and crit damage, elemental mastery until she has 200, attack percentage, and then more elemental mastery if she already has 200, unless you're running her on a Virgin team, in which case prioritize as much elemental mastery as possible. For her weapons, her signature weapon is going to be her best in slot since it has an 11% crit rate buff and that increases her crit damage by 24% and attack percentage by 32% for 6 seconds every every 10 seconds, but this duration can be doubled if she does normal attacks or charge attacks, meaning that this weapon has the potential of a 100% uptime. Additionally, if the character is in the Nitro state, the crit damage and attack percentage gained is increased by 50%, meaning that she can now have 36% crit damage and 48% attack percentage. For a limited 5-star alternative, the Beacon of the Reed Sea would also be good because it has a 33% crit rate main stat, and it increases her attack by 20% for 8 seconds when using her skill, and 20% again when receiving damage for 8 seconds as well. She also gains a 32% max HP boost when she doesn't have a shield. For another 5-star alternative, the Redhorn Stone Treasure would also be good, simply because of the 88% crit damage main stat that it has. For another 5-star alternative, the Wolf's Gravestone is a good option since it has a 32.2% attack main stat and increases her attack by 20%. It further increases her and her party members' attack by 40% for 12 seconds if she hits enemies that have 30% of their max HP left. For a 4-star alternative, which is a better alternative than the Beacon of the Reed Sea at high refinement levels, the Serpent Spine is a good choice because it has a 27.6% crit rate main stat, and it increases her damage by 10% for every 4 seconds she's on the field for up to 5 stacks. Keep in mind that if the character takes damage, 1 stack will be taken away. For another 4-star alternative, the Tidal Shadow would be a good choice because it has a 41.3% attack main stat, and it can increase Mavuika's attack by 48% for 8 seconds if she gets healed. For another 4-star alternative, the Melt Flower is a good melt or vape or even burgeon weapon because it has a 110 elemental mastery main stat, and it increases her elemental mastery by 96 and her attack percentage by 24% when the active character triggers an elemental reaction. If you have none of these weapons and are in need of another alternative, weapons that give her damage dealt, crit rate, crit damage, or attack percentage are also going to be good. And if playing her on a burgeon team, weapons with elemental mastery would be preferable, and if playing her on a melt/vape team, weapons that have a combination of both would be ideal. Keep in mind that all of these weapons are on average a good option for her, but if you want to play her as a main DPS or dual DPS, the ranking would be her signature, Redhorn Stone Treasure, Serpent Spine, Beacon of the Reed Sea, or Wolf's Gravestone, Melt Flower in a vape/melt and even burgeon team, and then Tidal Shadow. But for an off-field playstyle, the ranking would instead be her signature, the Serpent Spine, Beacon of the Reed Sea, Wolf's Gravestone, Redhorn Stone Treasure, Tidal Shadow, and then Melt Flower. For her teams, Mavuika can be played with a variety of different playstyles and a variety of different teams. Like I've mentioned prior, she can work as both an on-field and off-fielder on Burning, Burgeon, Melt, Vape, Overload, and Hyper Carry teams. For her Burning team, the only viable team includes either Kniech or Emily, with Emily being a really good Burning sub-DPS, and where Mavuika can act as a main DPS or a sub-DPS alongside her. Kniech also works really well with Mavuika, since Mavuika can apply Pyro off-field to cause burning, then give Kniech Skill Spiker a bigger damage bonus since she uses a Nitro Burst. She can also do a ton of nuke damage when she swaps in, and can either quickly dip to give Kniech a 40% damage bonus, or can finish off her ultimate and work as a type of dual DPS alongside Kniech. Kniech can also give Mavuika 30% attack for 10 seconds because he also uses a Nitro ultimate and can consistently regenerate Fighting Spirit for Mavuika's ultimate. For a burning team, she's also going to want another Nitro character like Ayansan, Pyro Traveler, Auroron, Kachina, or Cylonen, with Ayansan and Cylonen being her best since they can also work as flex characters. She's also going to want another flex character like Bennett and Ayansan if you want to buff Mavuika and Kniech, or Cylonen and Kazuha if you only want to buff Mavuika, or if you want, you can run another off-fielder of any elements with the Deepwood Memories artifact set to reduce Dendro Res and buff Kniech only. For example, as of right now, the best Kniech and Mavuika team consists of Mavuika, Kniech, Ayansan, and Escoffier with the Deepwood of Memory set, which allows her to shred Dendro Res for Kniech while also applying Cryo for Mavuika so that she can melt her nuke. For Burgeon teams, these teams are pretty simple. Mavuika is going to work primarily as an off-field pyro applicator, in which her job is to trigger the blooms so that she'll mostly never use her ultimate and just use her skill ring. For teammates, she's gonna want Dendro and Hydro applicators like Baishu, Nahida, Yao Yao, Yelan, Furina, Chinchuo, or Kokomi to spawn the blooms, and wants at least one Dendro character to have the Deepwood Memories artifact set to reduce Dendro resistance. For melt teams, she's always gonna want to melt the first hit of her ultimate because it's just an easy way of doing a ton of damage from her ultimate ultimate for pretty much every playstyle she utilizes. For a main DPS melt playstyle, her teammates are going to be cryo applicators like Citlali, Layla, Diona, Rosaria, Kea, or Escoffier, with Citlali being her best in slot melt enabler, and C6 Diona being noticeably powerful because of her elemental mastery boost. But for an off-field playstyle, she works really well with the likes of Ryosli and Ayaka, since they both have a ton of cryo application that allows Mavuika to pretty much always melt her sub DPS attacks and her nuke. With these characters, she can also be used as a dual DPS alongside them if you use another pyro applicator alongside her like Changling, Toma, Pyro Traveler, and Dea, so that there could be enough pyro application for the cryo on-fielder to melt. A good rotation is to apply pyro with Mavuika and your other pyro applicator, then melt it with your cryo dual DPS, then apply more cryo with your dual DPS, use Mavuika's nuke, and then swap out to your dual DPS so that they can gain a 40% damage bonus, or continue using her charge attacks, especially if the enemy still has the cryo aura. She's also going to want another Naito character if you're not already using Citlali, like Ayansan, Pyro Traveler, Auroron, Kachina, or Cylonen, with again Ayansan and Cylonen being her best since they can also work as flex characters. After that, you'll just want another flex character like Kazuha, Bennett, Cylonen, Ayansan, or Zhongli. For her vaporized teams, it's mainly the same, except this time she wants Hydro applicators like Furina, Yelan, Chincho, or Kokomi. For an off-field playstyle, she's gonna be great with new Villets, and especially Mualani, since Mavuika provides Mualani with enough pyro application that she is consistent and easy to use, unlike Changling, who requires a ton of energy to work consistently. But don't get me wrong, Changling is still insanely good for Mualani, since like I've mentioned, she is a really good pyro applicator that can be used with Mavuika in a melt team. Mavuika and Mualani can also have a burning vape combo with Emily, in where Mualani applies Hydro, then Mavuika vapes her nuke, and then her sub DPS and pyro application combined with Emily's sub DPS and Dendro application let Mualani have a practically infinite amount of pyro application that does an insane amount of sub DPS damage as well. She's also gonna want another Naito character and flex support like Ayansan, Cylonen, Bennett, Kazuha, Pyro Traveler, Kachina, or Zhongli. For Overload main DPS teams, she wants Chevruz to actually enable this playstyle, as well as a Naito character and flex supports. Typical teammates include Ayansan, Auroron, and Pyro Traveler for Naito points, Fischl and Beto as sub DPS / overload triggers, and Dea, Kojusara, or Bennett as flex or comfort characters who provide some level of sustainability or buffs. For an off-field overload Mavuika, she works really well with Verisa, since she can provide good sub DPS damage, buffs, and consistent nukes, since Verisa can generate enough Naito points for Mavuika. Not only that, but they both utilize a best in slot support, that being Ayansan and Cylonen. For her hyper carry teams, they'll mostly consist of just Mavuika, another Naito character, and two other flex slot supports like the ones I've already mentioned. For her C1, Mavuika's maximum Naito points are increased to 120, and she gains fighting spirit 25% more efficiently. Additionally, she gains 40% attack for 8 seconds after gaining fighting spirit. This constellation has an insane value considering that it's only her first constellation that allows her to get up to 150 fighting spirit just by using her skill, and it allows the fighting spirit regeneration from using normal attacks to actually be pretty decent, meaning that she is nowhere near as tied down to Naito state having characters as she previously was. For her C2, Mavuika's base attack is increased by 200 when she is in the Naito state, and she obtains effects based on the off firmament's form, meaning her skill. For her ring, nearby opponents' defense is decreased by 20%. For her Flame Strider, Mavuika's normal attacks, charge attacks, and her Sunfell Slice, that being her nuke from her ultimate, deal 60%, 90%, and 120% of her attack as increased damage, respectively. This constellation also has an insane amount of value, since it decreases enemies' defense by 20% when using Mavuika's skill, meaning that her support capabilities have rocketed. Not only that, but her ultimate damage has gotten a massive boost in damage as well. For her C4, the damage dealt boost from her talent, Kyongosi, is increased by 10% and no longer decays. This constellation is also pretty good, since it makes it so that her support capabilities are once again even better, and it increases her own DPS in the process. But this constellation requires much more investments compared to C1 and C2. Not only that, but it isn't anywhere near as good as them. For her C6, a Flame Strider will crash into the struck opponents, dealing 200% of attack as Naito aligned AoE pyro damage when her ring hits a opponents. When Mavuika is riding the Flame Strider, she will also summon another ring to follow her, which will decrease nearby opponents' defense by 20% and deal 500% of attack as Naito aligned AoE pyro damage to nearby opponents every 3 seconds. Keep in mind that this ring is a separate ring, meaning that the defense shred doesn't stack. Additionally, when Mavuika is riding her Flame Strider and is not in combat, when her Naito points drop to 5, she will gain 80 Naito points. This effect can trigger once every 15 seconds. This constellation is honestly absurd for her, increasing her off-field damage by practically doubling it, and it increases her on-field damage by around a third as well. Not only that, but her motorcycle uptime while exploring is literally infinite if you don't sprint and just like cruising. In conclusion, I would honestly go for a C2 since both her C1 and C2 make her a lot more flexible in a lot of regards, while also increasing her own personal damage. Her C4 is practically like any other C4. It's a small incentive to further go to C6 if you were already planning on going to. The damage increase isn't substantial, and the fact that it no longer decays by 2% every second is pretty good, but the damage difference is barely noticeable in comparison to her other constellations or her signature weapon. Her C6 is extremely powerful and it's definitely worth it if you have the money to spend and you really like the character, but it's honestly a bit too overpowered and honestly unnecessary considering it's worth max around $2,000. With that being said, please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.